1997's Medarot, released in 2 versions, is the first installment in the long-running series. It was never released outside of Japan, but once again, thanks to fan efforts, that will not prevent me and my very basic Japanese comprehension from playing it. A Medarot, or Medabot, as it was localized as and also the term I'll be using, since it rolls off the tongue easier, is a small metal robot made up of 3 components. The metal, which is placed inside the tin pet, and the 4 parts that are equipped to the tin pet. The game is a collect and battle style RPG, which was the style at the time. The player assumes the role of a young boy, canonically named Kuwagata Hikaru. Hikaru wanders around fighting random people he runs into, thwarting the plans of the evil Robo gang, and competing in tournaments. And that's kind of the gist of it. It's very light in the story department. Events happen that lead from one to another, but a big overarching story isn't the main point here. Not necessarily a bad thing or even unexpected given the time frame. That's not to say it's done perfectly though. The bar isn't very high for dramatics, but it can still fall short of what it wanted to do. After one encounter, your opponent just throws one of your Medabots off the roof. Dang, you get it back but it's broken. How terrible. Oh, Hikaru's dad is here. He fixes it. Well gee game, you had me worried for literally less than a minute. Or during a certain tournament. Your next opponent has kidnapped the masked heroine that totally isn't just the girl next door wearing a mask. Music changes to match the tension. It's time to give chase and... Oh, it changes to the regular music when leaving the building. That certainly deflates the excitement. So you go to the warehouse over here and he gives up pretty quickly because of the pet dog showing up and he just leaves. It's not like you even had to battle him an extra time before the next round. This is an important character. You now know he is evil, but he gained nothing from this. The villains are supposed to be comedic, I get that. It's obvious through them just wearing a full-body rubber costume and ending their sentences with "Robo." But this is still a letdown. Feels like a good time to introduce this little counter I'll be putting in the corner. Instead of just saying this is improved upon in the sequels, I'll be using the counter instead, since it'll be coming up somewhat often. For what the game lacks in story, it makes up for it, at least partially, with personality and character. Hikaru is not a silent protagonist. He has his own thoughts and reactions to the world and cast of characters around him. From the close friend, mischievous trio, no not that one, thank you, and some other classmates, to the oddballs that make up the Robo game. If you're someone who's familiar with the Medabots TV series, you won't be finding too many familiar faces, as that setting was based on the one from Medarot 2, the game that was remade on the Game Boy Advance and released internationally as Medabots. The evil organization is the same in name, but none of its members here were seen again. There is, however, still a connection. The guy who works at the convenience store named Hikaru in Japanese and Henry in the English dub? Yep, same guy, but younger. The backstory they gave him in the TV series is based on his adventures here, albeit his Beetle-themed Medabot isn't a part of the catalyst for the Days of Darkness, and the game doesn't end with you being forced to destroy your starter. Other than him, we have Dr. Medarot, Hawarama, and other international fighters, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Uruchi, aka Mr. Referee.
Fighters, ready? Medabots, roll battle!
None of these people are important to the story here though. Medabots fight in teams of up to 3. The waiting time between a Medabot performing an action after getting a command is called a charge, and the time between it performing an action and getting its next command is called cooldown. These are both represented in a visual resembling a relay race. Each part has a set amount of HP. When it runs out, the part becomes unusable. For the arms, this prevents their actions from being used. For the legs, this decreases mobility and increases wait times. And when the head part shuts down, so does the rest of the Medabot. You win by either shutting down the head of the opposing team leader, or by running out the timer and having more functioning parts than your opponent. The winner of a battle gets one of their opponent's parts at random. It is a staple of the series, and one I've never liked. I lost a battle, so now I get to lose a part of my robot, potentially putting me in a harder position to win any future battles? Yeah, no thank you. Even if it's when I have spares of, I still reload my save. There was a similar aspect in the trading card game, Magic the Gathering, and I think it's interesting to compare how both games developed this mechanic. Magic had an ante-rule where players would wager a random card from their decks when it was released in 1993. What happened to it? It went from being a part of the game, to being optional, to being banned at official events in the first couple of years. From what I've heard from second-hand accounts, it was unpopular among a lot of players. and it raised concerns that tournaments for the game could run into trouble with gambling laws and regulations. Many years later for Medabots, however, this seems to have stuck with the series, but more about that as an issue for later. There are parts for close range and long range attacks, stat alterations, setting traps, and healing parts. For close range attacks, the Medabot targeted will be the one closest to the middle line. What part they'll hit is unknown. Long range attacks show you who the target is, but the part is also targeted at that point, meaning should that part be destroyed by the time the action is to be performed, nothing happens. What part is targeted is also not shown. There is a lot of room for planning and strategy in this style of game. Some parts are very destructive but need accuracy rates increased to be consistent. Healing parts that target a damaged part can end up doing nothing if that damaged part is shut down before the healing action can be done, and lots of healing parts tend to be fragile themselves. There are defensive parts that just negate whole categories of attacks, and what parts should go onto bots are further complicated by compatibility with what metal is in use and whether it's a male or female tin pet. There's a lot more to go into, but it's really for you to figure out once you get to the point when you realize just throwing together parts at random isn't effective. I mean, it can be, but maybe refighting the same boss half a dozen times until you get lucky with taking out the leader and not losing yours super fast isn't how you want to play this game. Battles have the potential to be long and drawn out, but also be over in the first move, which can be frustrating. Having an enemy get in their first move, they happen to hit your leader's head, and they destroy it, instantly ending the match. This is far less of an occurrence in the later parts of the game, and also the reason my second Medabot from Most of My Battles was a knight with bulky shield parts that intercept attacks targeting the other two. But for the earlier part of the game, it can be rough, especially in the first, let's say, 30 minutes of the game. You only have your starter Medabot, and for one of them, their head seems like a magnet for attacks and somewhat fragile, which leads us to the topic of game overs. You'll be sent back to your last save point whenever you lose certain story battles, and whenever you don't have at least one Medabot fully put together. And you remember just a moment ago when I said you lose a part for losing a battle? You do that when you only have the one Medabot, and it's back to your last save point you go. Having other parts on hand won't matter. It's about having a put together bot at the instant of losing. At the very least, the game really doesn't wait too long before giving you your second tin pet and medal for you to put random parts on, but it's another reason why you might be saving after every encounter. Really, the greatest weak point of the battle system is the speed. Even on the fastest setting, this can be intolerable. When this game was re-released in a collection on the 3DS and on the Switch, there were options to greatly increase the speed. So if you're playing this on something with the option of speeding up the game, do not feel bad about doing that. There are lots of parts in this game, over 200, and 28 medals as well, and I, for one, am probably not going to collect all of them. Well, that's what I wrote down initially, but more on that in a minute. As should be obvious from the fact that there are two separate versions of the game, not every part can be obtained from playing just one version. But it goes further than just the parts of the Medabots on the cover. Imagine you and a friend want to each pick up a version, collect extras of the parts that your friend can't get a hold of, and then trade them. That's not going to be enough to get everything. I know that's also the case in some other Game Boy games, but I'm not comparing this negatively to them in this aspect. None of these games get a free pass on this. Firstly, the Medabot Samurai. The school principal in the TV series had one, and that's the case here as well. It might actually be the same guy for all I know. What makes it difficult to get a samurai for yourself is a two-part issue. What I mean is that the parts cannot be purchased from a store, and the principal is the only guy with samurai parts, but you're only allowed to fight him twice. Even if you get a different part from each battle, you will only have half the Medabot. However, you can get samurai parts by being traded Haniwa Golem parts between games. Certain parts in this game will transform when traded, a feature abandoned in later games. This is also important for obtaining parts for Bunny Heart, since there were only 2 battles featuring them, but I had to forego getting even half the parts in those cases for reasons I'll get into later. Pure Mermaid also needs to be obtained through trading, since you never fight one in the game, and only the leg part is available through solo gameplay. And then there's Blackmail. There's a Wolfman in this game, and he's the only user of the Medabot that resembles Baphomet, because why not? Blackmail's parts are among the strongest in the game, and the battles with Wolfman may be harder than the actual final boss. But there are only 2 battles to be had before the character disappears. There is an opportunity to get the leg separately, but you're still short 1 part. Lastly, Land Motor. Your rival, Yuki, is the only character with Land Motor parts, and you can fight him exactly 4 times, but one of those times he doesn't use Land Motor. Thanks for nothing, pal. An updated version of the game, Medarot Perfect Edition, was later released on Bandai's WonderSwan handheld, and it is a lot more lenient with part distribution. There are also Parts Collection and Parts Collection 2 back on the Game Boy, but I've not played them. My main point here was just how difficult getting everything with just the main games can be, and also the fact that those aren't translated in English, should that be a problem for you. And then there's one thing that adds on to how long this can take, and that thing is the fact that the part you get is random, but it goes past that. Let me just say real quick, the Classics collection that includes this game gives you a save state function, and I absolutely used save states while playing this. Not for the purpose of making this game easier, but to take out some of the randomness of the game to not waste potentially several hours of my life. Unless you think I did that already. Shush. Let's use getting Heal Angel without save states as an example. I would have used King Pharaoh as a more extreme example, because it's the same thing but worse, but you can get those parts by being traded Dondolu parts, so I'll brush that one aside. Before either of your two battles with the character Nai, she'll give you one of the parts of Heal Angel. First Angel Legs, and then Angel Body. This leaves the arm parts Angel Hand and Angel Arm. These two battles with Nai will be how you get those parts. The problem comes in with her part selection. She uses random parts from 4 different types of Medabots, including Heal Angel and the previously mentioned Bunny Heart. You save before starting the battle, check if she's actually using one of these 2 arm parts, and then reset to reload your save file in case she isn't. If she is, then you fight, win, and see what part you get. If you didn't get one of the arm parts, reset and redo the whole fight. Even if you can make quick work of her, the minutes from doing this repeatedly can really add up. And more importantly, that's just not a fun process. Then there's the second battle for the other arm part. It's the same process, but since you're only aiming for one type of arm, your chances are worse. Then there's the medals. I'm assuming the fan-run Wikia, Metapedia, and the full walkthrough posted there are right about this, because I want to find out the hard way if they're wrong. The Chameleon, Unicorn, Monkey, and Rabbit medals are all medals that you could miss the opportunity to obtain. These are all out of the way and very easy to miss. I don't like the idea that you could just miss out on getting them at a later point of the game, even after you've gotten to the post-game. The page listing the medals doesn't specify the Bat medal as one of these, but I can confirm that, in the post-game, I couldn't get back into the room where I got it. Then there are the special circumstances concerning the Unicorn, Ghost, Knight, and Mermaid medals. In Link battles, you have the choice of taking not just one of your opponent's parts if you win, but also one of their medals. Side note, that's awful. Medals are the things you level up, and starting from the third game, the things you name instead of the tin pets, which makes sense. The personality of the Medabot is in the medal. Sure, yours don't talk in this first game, outside of the Perfect Edition, but why would you want to wager a sentient being, the heart of the robot you're supposed to develop a connection with? Even the TV series looks down on this idea.
Medabot cannot survive without its medal. To row battle for medals instead of metaparts is disrespectful to your Medabot. Remember that in the future.
But maybe that was just an aspect the creators hadn't given much thought to. And just like some of the parts in this game, there are no second chances to use medals a second time without taking someone else's. Back on topic, if you take one of these 4 medals from your opponent, the medal will transform into a new type of medal. What type will you get? It depends. The Kabuto and Kuwagata versions each have different results for this. Then there's the medals you get for the endings. One ending gets you the Dragon medal, and the other gets you the Ninja medal, in the Kuwagata version. In Kabuto, these are the Devil and Angel medals. So, if you're interested in getting everything, and you're doing this solo, that means clearing the game twice, on both versions. Then, there's the Cat medal that needs you to have both starter medals, and of course a final medal that can only be obtained by having every other medal. I read up on all this and was sure that I wasn't going to go for 100% completion. It really would not have been necessary for making this video. And yet, here we are. All footage here was recorded by me. Why did I do this to myself? Well, okay, to be honest, I didn't clear the game 4 times. And quite frankly, neither should you unless you're obsessed with it, or if it's through the collection, but that's beside the point. The year is 2024. I met all of the requirements for both endings in both games, then I made copies of these save files on my computer. I really wonder how many people got every part and medal back in the day, when this game was new and before the parts collections. It's either buying both versions and having to restart each one at least once, assuming you knew going into it what parts you would only have one chance to get, or finding someone else with the game who's actually okay using parts or medals that they could never reobtain within their game by themselves as an ante. It's great that there are so many things to collect, but some of the means really ain't. And if I ever played this again, through means where I couldn't use save states, I somehow see my dumb self considering collecting every part again. But absolutely not the medals, and that's entirely due to how you move medals between games. There is no trading medals option. You have to battle, which is both slow to start up and slow to let play out even when one side does nothing. You essentially spin a wheel, stop it with the A button, and it will land on one of the 4 parts, the medal or nothing. And if you ended up taking one of the 4 parts, too bad. Medabots can't have their parts or medals changed out while you're linked up, making the Medabot with the medal you wanted to move to the other game unusable, unless you disconnect, add another part, and then reconnect. And let's look at how many times you would have had to do that. To complete the collection on, say, a Kuwagata version, that involves taking those 4 medals that change types, a Kabuto medal, the 2 different ending medals from the Kabuto version, the ending medal you didn't get from another Kuwagata version, and the alternate transformations of those 4 medals from earlier, meaning you needed to take them from another game while playing the Kabuto version beforehand. I worry about being too hard on this game. I'm gonna say the same thing later, but now it seems like a good time to stress that I do like this game, just not certain details. This, it baffles me. And another thing, but I'll hold off on that for right now. Medarot looks nice. The overworld view is exactly what you would think it would look like. Character portraits on the battle screen have personality, and the Medabots are detailed, and pretty well. The drawbacks in the presentation come from what isn't there. Take this scene with Hikaru's rival Yuki, for example. He has a battle in a tournament, with no opponent on screen. He wins, I think? But then his Medabot is attacked by an unseen enemy. Maybe? The game actually flashes back to this during the final act. Apparently this small child was doing it, but it's so odd having to rewatch a scene that made no sense from how it was depicted, and have it be discussed as if it did. Another thing is the lack of any character portraits, or even just a name in the text box to indicate who was talking. It's not a major problem, but it does get in the way a couple of times. Medarot is compatible with the Super Game Boy, meaning you get these neat borders with your starting Medabot, and the bare minimum needed to say this game can be played in color. It looks fine, but it isn't super necessary to go out of your way to have. For the music, there is, unfortunately, only one battle theme. It doesn't change from the random encounters for the boss battles, tournament matches, or the final battle. But really, that's fine. It's a good theme and later games would have their own variations of it. All the other tracks are pretty solid as well, which makes it easy to just use the game soundtrack for the background music of this video. So yeah, good presentation for the Game Boy and thus a good buffer segment before another one that's probably much longer than it really needed to be. There are 2 girls in young Hikaru's life. You have the option of pairing him up with one of them at the end of the game. There's the next door childhood friend, Kirara, and the Medabot part designer, Nae. When I first played this game several years ago, the ending I got was with neither of them. There are conditions for these 2 endings, and if you mess up any of them, you meet with that guy that sells baby chickens. He gives you a blue chick, a key item that does nothing but remind Hikaru of how alone he is. Following a guide this time while playing the Kuwagata version, and ignoring the fact that I would end up doing both endings on both versions for completion, I originally planned for Nae's ending. This is because this seems to be not in continuity, and thus a relationship that wouldn't be explored any further. When he grows up, Hikaru takes on the alter ego of the Phantom Retort, who is paired up with the Retort Lady. Can we try that again? When he grows up, Hikaru takes on the alter ego of the Phantom Retort, who is paired up with the Retort Lady. Yes, thank you. Notice the blonde hair on her. Hint. Oh, Kirara is blonde, by the way. Aside from the possibility that you're colorblind, I don't know what visuals I'll have on screen while recording this. Even the show reflects this. During the ending credits of the second TV series, Medarot Damashi, among these several photographs seen is one with Hikaru and an older Kirara. Nae is here too though, and is clearly the bigger winner when it comes to the adaptation. She plays an important role in Damashi, a season where Hikaru is absent and Kirara only ever made a cameo in the whole show, which is absolutely the inverse of what happens in this first game. Kirara is present throughout the story and plays an active role. Nae, on the other hand, not only does she not have a role in the story, but you can go the whole game without seeing her. And I don't mean that in a walk along this path to avoid her sense. I mean, after beating the Robo executive, Typhoon, at the excavation site, you can go to the laboratory. On the second floor, Dr. Medarot, who is indistinguishable from the other researchers, will give you a name tag that lets you enter the second room on the first floor. Sitting in the lower left of this room is Nae. The key word here is can. You can go to the lab to see her, but the game doesn't make you, and I don't know how much there is to point you in that direction. I like Nae from what I remember of her as an adult in Damashi and in the remake of the sequel. Here, I would say you get the bare minimum of what would be needed to identify her personality. She's not unlikable or anything, absolutely not. But it's odd to have someone who, I guess, counts as a secondary heroine have so much less exposure than the other one. And then there's the requirements for her ending. In addition to meeting her the first time, here's a quick checklist. To the left of your classroom is the girls' bathroom. Do not go there. Do not enter the restricted area in the lab. Buy the star piece key item from the observatory. Help her test parts after the first tournament with no indication you can do this now. Same thing again after the next tournament, and be sure to say yes to her question. Meet her in front of the observatory after the second test, but you won't know to go there unless you talk to her again right after the test and respond yes. When the story has entered the final act and Medabots are going on a rampage, give the solar laser part to the science teacher, then give the roots part to the school nurse. The emphasis is on then because you can't do it out of order. Finally, and this is the hardest part, go see Kirida on the beach after defeating the final boss, and reject her. I know I didn't have too much positive to say about the writing, but her dialogue for the scene is good. She might actually be worse since it makes it more painful to watch. Then that guy who sells baby chicks shows up to let you know you met the requirements for this ending. Hikaru sits next to Naya at the observatory. Roll credits. What is up with these requirements? The interactions with Naya are obvious to have. She and Hikaru need to talk if they're going to have a closer relationship. But the bathroom? How would Naya even know if you went in there? She doesn't seem to go to school. She already has her career started. But the part requirement is what really doesn't make any sense to me. Medabots are on a rampage. My first thought is to run out of the school to the place where I know the Robo gang is and confront them. But instead I'm supposed to stop at these two rooms specifically. And if you give the nurse the part first, you can't give the teacher the other part, and that locks you out of Naya's ending? Okay, I get it. You're supposed to talk to people all over the place. You talk to people, advance the story a bit, and then talk to people again. I had to keep focusing on the guide so as to not miss out on parts or medals. Maybe you do check out these rooms. But the nurse is who you would naturally run into first. Her office is closer to the stairs. If you go there first and see that she needs help, why would you think to not help her and move on? That seems awfully counterintuitive. You don't have to get either of these two endings, but that's not the point. The most I'll say about getting Kirida's ending is that helping out the teacher isn't required, so that is better. I'm worried that much of this review was negative or complaining, but I have come to like this game. It's just easier to talk about flaws in detail than it is to explain the aspects worth praising. But ultimately, Medarot is a fun game. It's rough around the edges, but you usually expect as much at the beginning of a series. So, do I recommend this game? Well, maybe? If you have absolutely no other exposure to the series, maybe you would be better off with the official English version of the sequel's remake, or the third game, or the PlayStation one, as those two are the only other ones with a fan translation. All these other options improve upon the storytelling and gameplay mechanics. It might be a more welcoming addition for a newcomer. With all that being said though, this is a fun game. It's entirely up to you and how much of a chance you're willing to give it, knowing what you do now. Medarot is sadly on the list of series that aren't as popular as I'd like for them to be. Their last game release, not counting the mobile game or the compilation, was back on the 3DS. So if you see me making videos about the rest of the series someday, it's because I decided my channel wasn't niche enough. I mean, it's because I wanted to draw a little bit of attention towards it. Yeah, that's it. In fact, I've already begun playing the sequel, in Japanese. That language I'm not exactly fluent in, meaning I'll pull up the dictionary every 5 seconds. It'll get done. Someday.